At York, just south of York, in the Vale, 400 acres, 7-year rotation, including wheat, barley, rape, beans, oats, and a bit of linseed at times. We've got temporary both cutting and grazing grass, and we've also got quite an area of permanent grass. It's all for the pedigree beef herd we're on. We're on a real mixture of land types, so we've got everything from blowing sand through medium loams and clays. The organic matters that we've had done, the sands are running about 4%, running up to the clays at 8%. And if I can put sort of a tagline, as it were, on what I'm doing, I'm just trying to break away from cannon bag farming. We've just got to break it. So we hear a lot about conservation ag. I'm trying to go beyond that and farm regeneratively, rather than just trying to maintain the organic matters. I'm trying to lift them back up again, trying to get back to where we were. So key cornerstones being the minimal soil disturbance with no till. They're running a long and diverse rotation, diverse cover crops. Any straw we don't need for the cattle we're chopping, and all the cattle muck goes back on. The soil armour with living plants and residue, and grazing livestock on the arable. So the machinery, two most important bits, the spade and the penetrometer. Whilst the spade is great, the penetrometer is very handy as well, just for speed. It's can be quite a challenge to dig so many soil pits over every field, so the penetrometer comes in really handy. Running a John Deere 750, principal drill, the stocks applicator on the back for slug pellets or Avadex or small seeds, and running a liquid fert kit on it as well. Just purchased an old CO4 and put the Metcalf tines on that. That's primarily to drill into chopped straw. We have found some hairpinning issues with the John Deere, not massive, but I'd like to just have that option in the shed for very little cost, and less cost than putting a set of the Arix row cleaners on, to have that drill in the shed. It'll also be a cheaper establishment of cover crops, just on lower running costs. Got an old McConnell shaker to put low disturbance legs on that. It's not been used yet, but it's there if we need it. 250 horsepower tractors, trail spray and a combine. So the cultivation team, mine are my worms, same as many of you in the room. Those who are a bit just starting out, they do everything. Processing the organic matter, getting your drainage, processing nutrients, making nutrients more available. Really cannot be overstated how important they are. So that's just a picture of the spring bean stubble. So in there we've got the middens that the beans have created. That's not a very big area. We've got 5 middens in there already. It's really, they are surprising just how quickly they move all that trash. It just took a week from a fine carpet to all moved into middens. So on the cropping side, the cash crops, growing a blend, 4-way blend on the winter wheat, Chabrask, Crispin, Kerrin and Gravity. I didn't go into quite so much as the hereditary traits as Simon, but this is our second blend now. We found that maturity is quite key when putting a blend together, because if you've got one variety in there which is a later mature than the others, you can end up losing yield with shedding or losing Hagberg, particularly if the weather turns against you. Gone for quite early varieties as well, because come on, brain. Because we're trying to get earlier harvests so we can get cover crops established earlier, and also because the no-till crops hang on longer than the conventional crops. You've lost a week, 10 days there anyway. Winter barley, Surgeon Orwell, again blended, reduced all pesticides, looking to cease using plant growth regs this time, and we're cutting seed treatments out on, because bulk of the seed is home sowed seed. We're putting 5 litres a hectare of molasses in with each pass of liquid fert. Haven't cultivated anything at all in the last 6 years, as I say. We've got the shakerator there if we need it, but we haven't yet found need for it. The only place I think we'll want it is contrary to what everyone thinks, and that is on the sands, because they're not self-structuring. I think it'll be the sands where we need it, if anywhere. Running permanent tram lines, and the tram lines are actually getting shallower each year, and when we dig in the tram lines, they're loose and friable underneath. It's quite surprising. We've been using SOYL for the P&K for the last 8 years, just started the next cycle. So being variable rate, applying P&K, and we've really got the fields averaged up now, balanced up, and got any excesses pulled down, and moving now onto Fiberfoss and blanket treatments. One thing I have noticed on the set of results that we've just received, any scientists here may be able to comment, but we appear to have really lost a lot of magnesium on the high mag clays. The levels have dropped an awful lot in the last 4 years. The only thing I can put it down to is higher soil health, but beyond that, I don't know. So as I say, no till, so winter wheat straight into the rape stubble, drilled it on the green, so that was sprayed off 6 days after drilling. So and that was spring beans into oats this last spring, just into, because I was in ELS at the time, I had to have overwinter stubble option. So rather than leave a bare stubble, I just put a low rate of spring oats in straight after the harvest, after the combine, so it's just running into a straight oat cover crop. But if we got an inspection, it shouldn't have caused any problems. In the Vale, back in 2015, Boxing Day, there's 15 feet of water stood on that field. That's the River Ouse flood bank behind. 2015 Boxing Day, as I say, it flooded. You wouldn't have seen the roof of the tractor in that field. It's quite silty, clay, and it takes a long time to drain. I left it. Some people there's quite a big area affected. Some people did drill earlier in the spring. I held off. I just didn't want to, although there was a dry surface, it was still very wet underneath. I didn't want to do damage at depth. I held off, put muck on, and then drilled a cover crop on the 1st of June. So foregone any income on that field for that 50 acres for that year. So obviously got quite a lot of sunflowers in the mix. So that was drilled on the drilling wheat on the 28th of September, 3 litres of glyphosate a week later, dose of slug pellets, nothing else, and the resultant crop, which went on and yielded fantastically well. And those fields, for giving them that rest and having that summer cover crop on, has done them the world of good, really has improved the soil structures. So on cover crops, growing in multi-species mix, using as much home-saved seed as we can, all before spring crops, so using beans, vetch, linseed oats, buckwheat, phacelia, oil radish and flowers. That's cost me £23.28, including the home-saved seed at market cost. Very simply, all I do is I have an auger feeder bucket for the cattle. I just chuck a bit of everything in and then just auger it straight into the drill hopper and just do that until the hopper's full. It's not rocket science. This past harvest, we had the magical 6 weeks between harvest and drilling. Winter barley after the winter wheat, so I put in a linseed phacelia buckwheat mix. That was £11.47 a hectare, the seed cost. Was it worth it? I don't know. The plants got to 6-7 inches high and the buckwheat did start to flower. As far as keeping the soil alive, I think it was worth it. So the cover crops, provided the weather's right, soil conditions are right, will terminate, or will graze off, I should say. Mob grazing local sheepman. So our aim is to eat a third, trample a third, and leave a third stud, as you can maybe see in the front of the photo. And that third that's left standing will regrow before spraying off and get a better kill that way. And because the plants start to regrow again, we'll get a lot more carbon sequestration from the rooting. So quickly do a slate test. So on the left we've got the no-till, on the right we've got the conventional. Sure you, most of you will have seen one. So after half an hour, the no-till still all sat largely in the mesh. Just some particles or aggregates have come down. Conventional is all gone. Our local water treatment works, they have 3 settling ponds, big ponds. They clean one out every year. They're pulling 23,000 tonnes of soil out of each pond that one year. That's out of the River Derwent. And that's why. Conventional ag and runoff. And it's not just the soil, it's all the nutrients that are with it. So started companion cropping with a rape. So quite a common mix, buckwheat, beans and berseem clover. Thank you. So we've got the buckwheat in there, so that's lifting phosphate up, excuse me, and adding roots. Spring beans in there, and then, where are we? Got the berseem clover down the bottom. So it really helped with cabbage stem flea beetle control. Really had very, very little bother with them. It's adding roots, it's adding aggregation, it's adding being a home source for the mycorrhizal fungi. And that's the crop that was a few days ago. So we've got the berseem clover still in there, the beans and the rape. And the buckwheat went with the first frost, but it had done its job. It lifted the phosphate, got roots down, getting roots for the drainage. It works really well. And we're getting less pigeon damage from having the beans in there. Thank you. So what I'm looking at moving on to is, particularly with having the cattle, so if I want to do, I can feed these blends or mixes, just get them analysed and then rolled. So looking at spring peas and spring barley, and spring beans and spring oats as options. What we are doing now is we've got temporary herbal lay in the ground and playing about trying to get a permanent clover understory. So one option doing that is instead of putting the berseem clover in with a rape as a companion crop, is putting white clover in and trying to keep that going as they do in France. But we have had success where we've sprayed grazing lays off where they've had white clover in the bottom. We've managed to keep that white clover living in the following spring bean crop and then in the following winter wheat crop up until full canopy closure. So that works really well. So moving on to the grassland, using herbal lays for both grazing and silage. That's giving us high yielding crops or high yielding grassland, high quality with anthelmintic properties and drought resistance. And that was particularly noticeable this year. Put a herbal lay in this spring. It's quite late going in because of the spring. But it out yielded even the standard ryegrass red clover mix that we've got. That herbal lay out yielded it by miles. And zero nitrogen. So we've got in a mix, we've got in at the moment for cutting grass, we've got Italian ryegrass, red clover, Timothy, chicory, plantain, and that's looking well. That'll be in for 3 to 4 years. On the grassland again, moving away from set stocking onto mob grazing. So mob grazing goes against all the norms that we've all been brought up with in this last 30 years or so, with high nitrogen, high Italian ryegrass mixes, and really intensive grazing. So we're paddock grazing with daily moves, so we've got high density short-term grazing on a 30 to 50 day cycle, grazing to no less than a 10 centimetre sward height, Again, with the same as the sheep on the cover crops, we're looking at eating a third, trampling a third and leaving a third. And one benefit we do get is even distribution of manures. And this is the reason for the 4 inches or 10 centimetres. Graze the grass right down and it'll take a long while to get back to this peak growth curve. So if we can pull the cattle out at 4 inches, it's straight back up to maximum height, maximum growth. With grass as well, as soon as it's grazed, the roots will die back. So if you can allow the plant to get further up into its growth, you're getting bigger roots, and then every time it dies back, that's where you're getting your organic matter lift. So again, we're trying to leave grasses in for 3 to 4 years rather than very short term, so you get maximum organic matter build-up. So just in pictorial, so that's the mob graze, that was grazed the previous day, mob of cattle, high intensity, small area, forward fence, rear fence, and just moving them on each day. The biggest problem being water. What we're going to do is we're going to run a bowser. So the mains will go into the bowser and then we'll run a water pipe along the field from the bowser to make sure that we have an air break in the water supply to comply with water regs. So just to summarise it, so we've got an extended grazing season, carrying more stock on the same area, lower costs, no fertiliser, healthier livestock with the anthelmintics. Can cope with higher levels of rainfall due to the improved infiltration that we're familiar with from the arable side of things, greater resilience to the weather, and less or no need to buffer creep or creep feed because you've got grass always in front of the cattle. If you want to go to the next level, as Mr. Salatin does over in the States, free range chickens following the cattle, eating all the worms, spreading the muck about, and you get a win-win, higher income. So just to summarise the regenerative ag, so we've got less runoff and erosion, less soil and nutrient loss, reduced pesticides, increased nutrient take-up. This is one thing I particularly think, particularly on the blowaway sands. I used to shovel manganese on left, right and centre 2-3 times in the autumn and as many times as I could go in the spring. I think it's partly that we're not moving the soil, we've got a firmer rooting zone, but also got far better soil health. And along with AMF, the plants are able to get hold of the nutrients, and I think that particularly shows manganese. But if it's true for manganese, it must be true for a lot of other nutrients, because we're just going on with a routine couple of manganeses in the spring more as a tonic. Before, we've lost 2 or 3 acres every year or more of crops to manganese deficiency. It really is horrendous. And it can be seen now in the Vale. There's big areas that are really struggling with manganese deficiency. Obviously reduce fuel and steel usage, increase water infiltration, water holding capacity. For every % of organic matter we can raise the soil by, we're holding another 200,000 litres of water, 20 mil of rain, which is one of the reasons I believe that these no-till crops are hanging on longer than neighbouring crops under conventional agriculture. And with that raised organic matter, we're also getting the higher cation exchange capacity, sequestering a lot more carbon, and we've got the resilience to weather extremes. And as a spin-off, we're getting far higher levels of wildlife on the farm, be that bird life and mammals. Thank you. Hopefully we'll keep some of the clover, but I think a combination of the frost and the astrocurve I think will nail it, unfortunately. But the beans, the buckwheat's obviously already gone with the frost, but the beans, well, the astrocurve's gone on, should have gone on a week or so ago, but weather's, so it's to go on yet, but it'll take the beans out, and we're pretty certain it'll take the clover out, unfortunately, but due to a little bit of blackgrass and brome in there, we're needing to use the astrocurve.
Angus, are you grazing your cattle and your cover crops at all?
No. No.
Do you think they're doing too much damage, do you think, or?
I think the potential would be for too much damage. Very little of the arable is fenced, so there'll be a, yes, we've got electric fencing, so we could run that out, but at the moment we've got no temporary electric fencing. So if we invest in the temporary electric fencing, we could graze cattle on the cover crops, but no, we're not set up for it. And I think the level of poaching damage by sheep I can accept, but to put cattle on there I think would be another, would be too great a level of poaching, I think, if it turned wet.
How do you minimise the allocation of feed in the bulk grazing system?
Just by having the fence closer or further, depending on.
But if they're always leaving a third, won't they just eat that remaining third?
Well, it comes with experience, is how getting a feel for how much grass is in front is there in the field, or grass, herbs and everything else is in the field. And if you see that they've eaten more than you want that day, then you just you give them a bigger area the following day, to try and match what they're eating in the 24 hours, or what damage they're doing in the 24 hours, to what you want. Okay.
Good, Angus, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure that, is there one more question?
Yeah.
One more question, then we'll wait for the panel.
Just one question. You're saying with your cover crop mix, you'll have beans, vetch, linseed.
Yeah.
Do you get much separation in the drill? How do you actually stop all the linseed going out in the first 5 acres and the beans going out in the last?
Never seen any separation at all in either in the drill hopper or in the field. Excuse me. What we tend to find is, because there's so many different seeds in there, and because quite a lot of them are rough coated, they act a bit like Velcro, as it were, to stick to each other. So they hold everything together, if that makes sense. If it was, for argument's sake, rape and berseem clove, which are both very small, very fine, smooth coated round seed, I'd be a bit more nervous. And that's why when I drilled the rape, when I drilled some of the companions this last harvest, I only mixed them up in hectare bags. So I just put 1 hectare in a time, drilled that, then put another hectare. So there was less chance of there being separation over a big area. Okay.
Excellent, Angus.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
More questions later on?